All right, welcome back, friends. It's DJ Montague. Today we're gonna do a little bit different of a video for you. I wanted to go through my build that I'm playing in PvP for the new MMO Swords of Legends Online, and I've been doing a lot of PvP and playing quite a bit of the arena, quite a bit of the battlegrounds and battlefields and stuff, doing a lot of world PvP. And I just wanted to kind of give a little rundown of how to effectively play and use the skills that you're given, because there's not really a whole lot of diversity, but just give like a kind of a beginner's guide to how I play Sword Artist, which is the ranged version of Spellblade. So, starting off, we're going to look at our basic skills. These are just your regular damage skills. Mysterious Swords is your left click or your Q, depending on which mode you're in, action or tab target. Mostly I play in action with PvP, especially in this game. I play action all the time, but I'm not a big fan of tab targeting. So anyways, let's get into it. Your left click, Mysterious Swords, it just does really no real damage. The only reason you would be using it is to get another stack of your Crane Talons. Every 3 attacks of Mysterious Swords gives you 1 charge of Crane Talons, which is really helpful for damage output. Crane Talons is your highest damage output in this build. Concussion Sword is your right click normally, but I've actually changed that to Cloud Dragon Strike, which I'll talk about in a few minutes or moments. But Concussion Sword is a chi spender that gives you sword intent and puts blades on the ground for you. One of the things that Sword Artist has is you can have blades on the ground, and when you use one of your abilities, it will add more damage depending on how many blades you have. The skill I was just using was Concussion Sword, and you can see the number 4 here on the screen means I have 4 blades on the ground. Okay. Next we get to Crane Talons, which, like I said, is your highest damage ability. You almost, I feel like, want to use this on cooldown. It's so high damage and also gives you a crit buff and a haste increase and increased critical damage. And you can get like 3% increased critical damage, which is great. Crit rate by 3% per stack and haste by... I think haste by 5%. I think that's the rule. Let's double check this real quick. Because I got my stats up here. Yeah, it's just the crit rate. So I went from 4% to 17%-ish. So Crane Talons also gives you this little thing here under your class's ability bars. But it gives you Crane's Cry, which just tells you how much... or how many seconds you have left on your buffed. So that is Crane Talons. Like I said, big damage. You want to use it almost on cooldown. Cloud Dragon Strike is my right click, your first real ability that you get that isn't your Mysterious Swords or Concussion Sword. But Cloud Dragon Strike, sorry. When you hold it down, it uses all of your sword intent, which is these 5 blue swords here, and you right click, or I right click, hold, and it will use all those charges, and then it will do damage based on how much sword intent you use. And that's a big part of the rotation. You want to use your sword intent, you want to use your swords on the ground for big damage and big bursts. Your 5th skill here is Heaven's Sword Against Demons. In PvE, sometimes this will do like big damage to certain monsters. I'm not sure what type they have to be to do the damage. I assume demons. But in PvP, it is just a stun. Depending on how long you hold it, the longer you stun the person for. And it stuns in a small AoE as well. Now, I don't really ever charge this skill up because there's a lot of interrupts in this game. So usually I'll just use it for a quick 2-second stun on somebody to potentially force a use of a defensive, like a CC break or something like that. So another skill you get, Field of Recovery Formation. Now this is just a basic heal pad. It's a point blank AoE that you put on the ground. You can't really see it here because it matches the sky and the ground, but you can kind of see the area of effect of that. And it doesn't heal for very much. There are ways to make it heal for more, but still you're not going to get much mileage out of it. You might get like 1,000 health, which can be the difference in a fight. But it's kind of situational. Special mechanics, this is a passive. This Shadow Sword is a passive. Targets hit by Concussion Sword can leave behind a Shadow Sword. That's part of the Concussion Sword thing. So, this one, the Shadow Sword Focus, this is your second best damage tool. You get some really cool passives with this one that you can kind of augment, and I'll go through that when we get to Astral Blessings and Glyphs. Command all swords to attack a selected target. You can have up to 10 swords, and for each sword, it does 239 points of damage, so 2,390 points of damage, and you restore 5 sword intent. Sword intent is your blue swords, like I said, so you automatically go to max stack. So this is a kind of a way to refill your bar and continue your damage rotation. Spellsword, this is your blink ability. You throw a phantom sword in the direction you're moving. The sword will stop 20 meters from you, and then you can press it again within 8 seconds. This is a great ability for getting away from melee, or baiting out some movement abilities, because when you throw it, like let's move forward and throw it, you can see the sword just about 20 meters ahead of me. I can move away and then decide to move to it. So during the movement, you are unstoppable, so you cannot be CC'd. So in really tricky situations, you can get out of CC. It's really one of our only ways to negate CC on command. There is another skill that removes CC from you, but doesn't give you CC immunity. This is a CC immunity for that movement, which is great. Cloud Seal and Cloud Step are two abilities that I really won't get into because they're not really PvP abilities. They're just like you put down an area where you can teleport you and your friends to within 30 minutes. So if you like put it in town and you go out and do a bunch of quests, then you want to go turn those in, you can bring your friends back. And I mean, it's kind of, I never really used it anyway. And we'll get to our main interrupt, which is Lightning Lock. Interrupts target's magical chant and binds the target for 4 seconds. If you're successful at interrupting the target's song spell, 1 sword intent will be restored. Now, this skill, it's worded kind of weird because it's an interrupt and a root. So it will interrupt, but if it doesn't interrupt, it will still root. Which is it's pretty good. You can use it against some melee characters, some ranged characters, depending on what you're fighting. I usually save it for fighting healers and bards and stuff like that. I'll kind of lock them up. Here, let me move away from this guy who's going in. And so next we have our second CC ability, which is Gravitational Pull, which I think was one of the strongest CC abilities in the game currently. It does have quite a long cooldown of 45 seconds, but stuns targets in an 8-meter radius for 5 seconds, pulls them to you, and then pushes the target back to 12 meters in front of you. Now, this ability has a couple multifaceted ways that you can use it, because it can be canceled after the stun effect happens, but before the pushback happens. So you can cast that stun is the pull, and then the push away is obviously the movement part of the ability. And you can cancel that with another attack before you push the person away. So if you're trying to peel for your healer, or there's something going on where you don't want people to be near your healer, you know, like you're chasing them, you can just pull them in and then like dash to get out of the pushback part of the skill and just keep them where they are stunned for 5 seconds. Alrighty. Let's get into, let's see. Wind Farewell, yeah, reduce damage by 3%, cool. For each sword intent unit. So that's great for, like, if you're full on sword intent and you got some bard or summoner casting on you, you kind of want to maybe keep sword intent, but probably not. So Mystery State, this is our, basically a shield wall. Reduces damage taken by 50% and 70% in PvE. So PvP, obviously, this is a massive skill. Timing on this, you have a 6-second duration, And if you're attacked, you strike back. So it's like a counter strike for every time you're attacked, and it's like a 0.5 second on return damage. And you have 2 stacks of this. Fantastic ability. And the use of it is unreal. Like, if you get stunned by a Spearmaster and you're afraid of getting bursted down, you hit Mystery State, and you're gonna live a lot longer, obviously. Spearmasters can, burst you down in like 3 seconds or something like that if they have their ultimate ability up, and they just slap people super hard. All will be one. Everybody, I think, in the game has this kind of ability where invisible enemies are briefly visible during the activation of the formation. I don't know what the activation of the formation it means, but it gives like invis enemies a little silhouette, which is great. And this is your first CC break. This is Chaos in World's Beginning. You get 2 charges of it if you spec into it. I do for PvP, obviously. I want to not be near people. So just a 45-second cooldown, removes crowd control effects, and makes the target immune to them last 6 seconds. Okay, so pretty good. So let's go into our big damage ability. This is a massive AoE called Formation of Yin and Yang. It's very worded again poorly, but receives the Purify effect for 20 seconds and casts a spell that lasts for 5 seconds at the target location. Enemies in the formation receive a delay effect and suffer 4,000 damage over the 5 seconds. Okay? Delay cannot perform the Purify action. I assume delay means you cannot get out of CC, or I'm sorry, the delay effect means you cannot get out of CC. You can't break CC in the formation, which if you throw a CC down and then like throw this formation of Yin and Yang, they have to sit in it, unless, you get CC break and whatnot. It's just an all-around amazing skill for damage. Also, on the Purity effect, increases your magic attack by 30% and restores 10 chi per second. So you would be able to spam something like Concussion Sword pretty much the entire duration of Formation Yin and Yang, and be able to then use Sword Focus pretty quickly for a lot of damage. 30% increased damage, burst on this, fantastic. And you have a silence, which is very similar to your Lightning Lock, Interrupt, but this is just straight silence. So it does a little bit of damage, silences for 3 seconds, and it's on a 45-second cooldown. It's a pretty good ability to use. I would recommend using Lightning Lock first, and then silence if they're going to go again. Or, you could go vice versa. But Lightning Lock is a root as well, so people can't like auto you at all. So that's why my reasoning for Lightning Lock. Blade Heart, this is your true ultimate ability, but this is only in PvE. You can't use it in PvP. This is your dodge and march in the snow, Blade Echo. This is PvE only ability as well. So all in all, pretty much what you want to do as a sword artist is you're rotating between using 3 to 4 abilities in ways that are spenders and builders. Your Cloud Dragon Strike is a big spender of sword intent. Your Concussion Sword is a big builder of your swords that exist on the ground. Your Crane Talons is a big builder of sword intent as well, and of damage. So you're mostly rotating between those 3 and trying to be as mobile as possible. I have those particular abilities set to my mouse so that I can continuously move while charging, making sure that I'm always at least going somewhere. And you can use all these abilities while moving. So again, incredibly mobile class we have. So let's look at our Astral Blessings. So when you first start getting Astral Blessings, they recommend you go a build which just accents Cloud Dragon Strike. It is these ones with the stars. And I actually do not like that one for PvP, that particular build. For PvE, it's fantastic. You're just spamming full stack Cloud Dragon Strikes and blowing AoE stuff up and just destroying everything. But I instead go the build of the Shadow Sword focus. So everything that I do in PvP is based around that. Big damage from Cloud Dragon Strike into Shadow Sword focus and back into a big Cloud Dragon Strike. That's kind of my burst window. So the duration of Shadow Sword focus is increased to 20 seconds, which means the swords that are on the ground are increased to 20 seconds. They normally only last, I think, 10 seconds. So that's a pretty big thing. And also the cooldown of Shadow Sword focus is shortened by 2 seconds, increases the damage of it in PvP by 25% as well. So it's just strictly like, here's this PvP ability and you should learn it. The other passive here, like I said, is based around Cloud Dragon Strike, and it increases based on how much sword intent you use beyond 2 stacks. The second ability, Return to the Truth, I'm a huge fan of this ability because it gives you a dot and gives you constant swords. So you always have the availability to press Shadow Sword focus off cooldown, get your sword intent back, and really continue damage. So the passive of it with Shadow Sword focus, the target hit can be marked with a protective primal force of World's Beginning, which makes no sense as a damage ability, but it is. And then the active, you receive Return to the True status, or Return to the True status. Press the button again to lift the status. You don't really want to not have the status on because it's a great passive. Considered active, I guess you could say. But I'll show you what it looks like. You throw a bunch of swords on the ground, and then after a few seconds, swords start spawning all the time. And you just consistently have that up. Now, I had confusion with the wording of this skill because I thought I would have to rotate between passive and active. I have noticed that when you do have it active, the passive still triggers, so it still does the damage. And that's the damage of 149 points of damage every 3 seconds for 15 seconds. So pretty good passive damage on that. And then the Return to Truth passive is Shadow Sword created next to you every 5.75 seconds. So 6 seconds, you get a Shadowed Sword. And this one, next line, we have Crane's Shadow, which is if you're under the Crane's effect, the damage of Shadow Sword focus is increased by 4% per stack. And like I said, with Crane's Talon, you will be using it quite often, increasing that up to 12% because you'll have 3 stacks. The targets of Crane Talons restore 10 points of chi as well, giving it a builder aspect to Crane's Talons, which you'll be using often. And the damage dealt by Shadow Sword focus to targets with more than 50% in HP is increased by 30%. Massive, because I mean, once you get that off in PvP, a 30% DPS increase on one of your, or 30% damage increase on your hardest hitting ability that isn't your minute-and-a-half cooldown is so great. Especially with another glyph to it as well. We'll get into that in a few. So this next passive is Dragon Sword. Creating a dragon or Shadow Sword can give you 1 stack of Dragon Swords. Each stack increases the damage of the next Dragon Sword or Shadow Sword focus by 1%, up to 10 stack. 10% increase to Shadow Sword focus. I mean, what's not to love, I guess. And our last ability, Cloud Smoke. One of my favorite abilities in battlefields, one of my favorite abilities in arenas, because it sends out 5 swords. I'll show you, actually. How about that? It says reduces the target's movement speed by 50% for 6 seconds. Additional effect. Attacks targets on the path after 1 second and stuns them for 4 seconds. That means is when the swords come back to you, if people are still in there, they get stunned for 4 seconds. So it's a slow and a stun. So you'll hit the button, send out these 5 swords, and then they come back. And that is a full duration stun. It's bananas as a skill. Does a very small amount of damage. And this other thing that says Smash Golden Shell, it doesn't really matter for PvP because PvP you don't have Golden Shell. PvE you do, and that's where this 1000 Lights skill starts, or 1000 Lights skill comes into play. Now we've got kind of what the abilities do. Let's get into the glyphs. So there are a couple different ways you can glyph for PvP. If I'm doing rated arenas, with a healer, chances are you're going to get an opposing healer on the other team. So I run with this skill, this first one, called Stratus Cloud. Now, Shadow Sword Focus reduces the target's regeneration by 20% for 10 seconds. That is healing, not just regeneration. That's just healing. So a flat 20% Mortal Strike on your hardest hitting ability, and it lasts for 10 seconds, which the cooldown of this skill with the Astral Blessings I have is 10 seconds. So almost permanent uptime if my rotation is perfect. The second ability, Spiritual Channeling, formation of Yin and Yang is reduced by the base cooldown by 10 seconds. It's good, but you want people to be dead. So you don't want to really reduce the cooldown of something that it's going to hit hard, obviously, but it shouldn't come back up again in a fight. Fights last about 2 minutes. You're using this and it's like a 1.5 minute cooldown. So, yep, 95 seconds. So your 10 seconds is not going to be all that much. Maybe in battlefields where games just last for quite a while, it's good. You might get an extra one out of the battlefield, but maybe like maybe in World PvP as well, that might work, but not for arenas. Waiting patiently, you get 1 extra charge of Chaos in World's Beginning. That, I mean, it's a must-take for PvP. That's a second charge on your trinket, second get out of jail free card. I mean, you have to. You got to take that. True Chi is when using the formation of Yin and Yang, your magic attacks increases by 10% and the other team members by 3% for 90 seconds. Obviously, you're using this for your big burst window, or using it to create space for your healer. So why not give everybody a damage boost and also yourself a massive damage boost? 10% damage is nuts. Polarization is a glyph that I don't understand. And if somebody wants to tell me what it does in the comments, I've tried it on some PvP mobs. I've tried it on regular mobs. I've tried it in PvP, and I've tried it in PvE content. And I would assume it's supposed to make a levitation circle where you knock people up, but I have not seen that do that yet. So, no idea. I tried it a couple times, didn't work for me. All right, let's get into, these are neutral glyphs. These will be in both specs. So these ones on the right side here are all for Bladestorm specs. This is all for just neutral, like both specs can use these. So this Path of Chivalry is really good for PvE content because you're not going to be dodging very much because you should be positioning correctly. And it gives you 1% crit rate for every time you don't dodge, I guess. There's 3 stacks, and every time you dodge, it has 15 seconds to regenerate. It's like 3% crit rate. Great. But I dodge a lot, so there's really no reason to have Path of Chivalry. You want to dodge like almost off cooldown because people are just going to be in your guts when you're in PvP as a sword artist. So this next one I take sometimes. Depending on what's going on, I switch between Stratus Cloud and return to original battle formation. It's because the reason I use this is because I don't really feel like any of these sword artist glyphs are worth taking when you're not facing a healer over any others. So like True Chi is an insta take, Waiting Patiently is an insta take, Stratus Cloud is not. If you're not fighting a healer, there's no reason to take it. And then the Spiritual Channel and Polarization are not really used in PvP for me, so there's no reason. So I would go return to original battle formation to get an extra 100% on my heal. This Field of Recovery formation skill, the minute cooldown that heals you for a ton. And then we have Flood of Clouds. Flood of Clouds, if your chi or sword mana does not exceed 10 in battle, so if you're using all this chi down here on Concussion Sword, it will restore 30 chi instantly, and this effect cannot be triggered more than once every 30 seconds. It's good for just keeping up damage rotations used in PvE, but the same can be said for Cloud Break Wave, which is the one I do take pretty much every time I enter PvP. Your sword intent is less than 1. 2 units of sword intent will be restored instantly. This is, you're holding down right click Once it gets below 1, it will reset, give you 3. So super helpful because you are using Cloud Dragon Strike quite a bit. And I kind of wanted to go through like a basic damage rotation on a burst window, or give you like a baseline rotation. So what we're going to start off with, kind of walk it through real quick in my head, and then we'll try and make it happen live. So optimally, you want to start off the battle with your sword intent all spent. You want to walk up, you can be moving around, you just go on somebody, right? Get a decent amount of damage out, and then you want to start building your sword intent back and getting swords on the ground. So we're going to start off, we're going to use all our sword intent. We're going to start off with Crane's Talons, get a couple charges of that, and then use Concussion Sword, move that, back to using all our sword intent, boom, Shadow Dragon Focus, back to using our sword intent, and then rinse and repeat. Sword intent, and shadows back up. And now, that kind of gives you like a rough like 20-second rotation of how to approach damage if you're not CC'd or not interrupted by any means. Someone's not like training you down and you're not moving the whole time. That's your optimal damage rotation. Once you kind of get into a rhythm, it becomes really quick and easy, and you'll just be able to see quickly, oh, I have 4 swords on the ground, I have 5 dragon intent, I need to know what to do next. I should spend my dragon or my sword intent, then do shadow sword focus, and then get the sword intent back, do another rotation of Cloud Dragon Strike, and so kind of give you guys a little bit of an idea of what to do. Some of the things that really I had some questions on is when to use Formation of Yin and Yang. It is an ability that kind of, it can do a ton of damage, but it is a localized area. You will throw it down and it stays right there. It does a bunch of damage, but if people are like mid-dash, obviously it's hard to use. You want to be able to use it with CC. It also gives you the second ability that does single target damage called 1,000 Swords. Yeah, just a little extra damage. Not a little, that's quite a bit. But you can get it twice during the use of Formation of Yin and Yang. So it is good for burst windows. If you're like, I need to get this guy down, I have CC on him, I'm going to do a knockback with Gravitational Pull, Formation of Yin and Yang, and then immediately hit your second part of it, which is 1,000 Swords, and then start charging up. You're like, that's a massive amount of burst. That's what, like 6 to 8k burst. If they stay in it, they die, pretty much. So you want to use it when you can get CC out, or you want to use it to give your healer breathing room, because if people are in that area, they're taking so much damage. It's usually what I top damage with, or why I top damage, because of the amount of people sitting in one area. Sometimes in battlefields I save it, but usually in arenas I don't save it as much. I try to get that 10% damage buff. I try to use it in a CC window to force people to do something. I'm a player that likes to be the aggressor. So in general, I want to force my opponent to use their CC removal so that I know it's down and I can CC them for the next rotation. So it might not always be the best choice. And once we get more into the metagame of how the higher arenas are, I might switch my style up to use this Formation of Yin and Yang in more of a burst window. But for now, I like to force people to do something, because I know that I can do enough damage if they're trying to run away from it anyway. So that's kind of my little guide of how I play in PvP currently, and how I'm going into the current beta test for week 2. Thank you guys for stopping by. Much appreciated. Make sure you follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/DJ Montague. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.